said the Bat. "Perhaps you'll find a way." So Belinda thought and thought, and at last she got the book that had the portraits of eligible princes in it, and she wrote to the prince who had the christening curse, and this is what she said: "Princess Belinda of Carrillon-land is not afraid of christening curses. If Prince Bellamant would like to marry her, he had better apply to her royal father in the usual way. P.S. I have seen your portrait." When the prince got this letter he was very pleased, and wrote at once for Princess Belinda's likeness. Of course they sent him a picture of her Sunday face, which was the most beautiful face in the world. As soon as he saw it he knew that this was not only the most beautiful face in the world, but the dearest. So he wrote to her father by the next post, applying for her hand in the usual way, and enclosing the most respectable references. The king told the princess. "Come," said he, "what do you say to this young man?" And the princess, of course, said, "Yes, please." So the wedding day was fixed for the first Sunday in June. But when the prince arrived with all his glorious following of courtiers and men at arms, with 2 pink peacocks and a crown case full of diamonds for his bride, he absolutely refused to be married on a Sunday. Nor would he give any reason for his refusal. And then the king lost his temper and broke off the match, and the prince went away. But he did not go very far. That night he bribed a page boy to show him which was the princess's room, and he climbed up by the jasmine through the dark rose-scented night and tapped at the window. "Who's there?" said the princess inside in the dark. "Me," said the prince in the dark outside. "Then it wasn't true," said the princess. "They told me you'd ridden away." "What a cold you've got, my princess," said the prince, hanging on by the jasmine boughs. "It's not a cold," sniffed the princess. "Then, oh you dear, were you crying because you thought I'd gone?" he said. "I suppose so," said she. He said, "You dear," again, and kissed her hands. "Why wouldn't you be married on a Sunday?" she asked. "It's the curse, dearest," he explained. "I couldn't tell any one but you. The fact is, Malevola wasn't asked to my christening, so she doomed me to be, well, she said, moderately good-looking all the week, and too ugly for words on Sundays. So, you see, you will be married on a weekday, won't you?" "But I can't," said the princess, "because I've got a curse too, only I'm ugly all the week and pretty on Sundays." "How extremely tiresome," said the prince. "But can't you be cured?" "Oh yes," said the princess, and told him how. "And you?" she asked. "Is yours quite incurable?" "Not at all," he answered. "I've only got to stay under water for 5 minutes and the spell will be broken. But you see, beloved, the difficulty is that I can't do it. I've practised regularly from a boy, in the sea, and in the swimming bath, and even in my wash-hand basin. Hours at a time I've practised, but I never can keep under more than 2 minutes." "Oh dear," said the princess, "this is dreadful." "It is rather trying," the prince answered. "You're sure you like me?" she asked suddenly, "now you know that I'm only pretty once a week?" "I'd die for you," said he. 'Then I'll tell you what. Send all your courtiers away and take a situation as under gardener here. I know we want one. And then every night I'll climb down the jasmine and we'll go out together and seek our fortune. I'm sure we shall find it.' And they did go out the very next night, and the next, and the next, and the next, and the next, and the next. And they did not find their fortunes, but they got fonder and fonder of each other. They could not see each other's faces, but they held hands as they went along through the dark. And on the 7th night, as they passed by a house that showed chinks of light through its shutters, they heard a bell being rung outside for supper, a bell with a very loud and beautiful voice. But instead of saying, "Supper's ready," as any one would have expected, the bell was saying, "Ding dong dell, I could tell where you ought to go to break the spell." Then some one left off ringing the bell, so of course it couldn't say any more. So the two went on. A little way down the road a cow-bell tinkled behind the wet hedge of the lane, and it said not, "Here I am, quite safe," as a cow-bell should, but "Ding dong dell, all will be well if you—" Then the cow stopped walking and began to eat, so the bell couldn't say any more. The Prince and Princess went on, and you will not be surprised to hear that they heard the voices of 5 more bells that night. The next was a school bell. The schoolmaster's little boy thought it would be fun to ring it very late at night, but his father came and caught him before the bell could say any more than "Ding-a-dong-a-dell, you can break up the spell by taking—" So that was no good. Then there were the 3 bells that were the sign over the door of an inn where people were happily dancing to a fiddle because there was a wedding. These bells said, "We are the merry 3 bells, bells, bells. You are 2 to undo spells, spells, spells." Then the wind, who was swinging the bells, suddenly thought of an appointment he had made with a pine forest to get up an entertaining imitation of sea waves for the benefit of the forest nymphs who had never been to the seaside, and he went off. So of course the bells couldn't ring any more, and the Prince and Princess went on down the dark road. There was a cottage, and the Princess pulled her veil closely over her face, for yellow light streamed from its open door, and it was a Wednesday. Inside a little boy was sitting on the floor. Quite a little boy. He ought to have been in bed long before, and I don't know why he wasn't. And he was ringing a little tinkling bell that had dropped off a sleigh. And this little bell said, "Tinkle, tinkle, tinkle, I'm a little sleigh bell, but I know what I know, and I'll tell, tell, tell. Find the enchanter of the ringing well, he will show you how to break the spell, spell, spell. Tinkle, 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 I'm a little sleigh bell, but I know what I know." And so on, over and over, again and again, because the little boy was quite contented to go on shaking his sleigh bell for ever and ever. "So now we know," said the Prince. "Isn't that glorious?" "Yes, very. But where's the enchanter of the ringing well?" said the Princess doubtfully. "Oh, I've got his address in my pocket book," said the Prince. "He's my godfather. He was one of the references I gave your father." So the next night the Prince brought a horse to the garden, and he and the Princess mounted, and rode and rode and rode, and in the grey dawn they came to Wonderwood, and in the very middle of that the magician's palace